Netflix is making historic films cool again, giving us our first look at the new trailer for The King, which looks to cover the story of King Henry V of England and the Battle of Agincourt. The film itself looks to be a fairly straightforward adaptation of Shakespeare's King Henry V, with a couple flashbacks thrown in, but we'll get to that in a minute. The movie stars the up-and-coming actor Timothée Chalamet as King Henry V, who joins the ranks of Sir Kenneth Branagh and Sir Laurence Olivier in portraying this paragon of medieval royalty and well-trod historic character. He's joined by Joel Edgerton as the classic literary character Falstaff, who also helped to write the movie, by the way, so he gave himself a heck of a juicy part, Johnny Depp's daughter doing a French accent as Catherine of Valois, and Twilight Sparkle Pony as the Dauphin of France. Which is frankly unfair to Robert Pattinson, as he's worked really hard to become a hell of an actor since then, and earned this role by appearing in the director's previous acclaimed film, The Rover. But in this case, Dauphin is just a fancy word for prince, and he's constantly concerned with impressing his father, the King of France, played by Ben Mendelsohn, adding yet another bad guy to his long list, because there's something about that man's face and voice that just makes you want to punch him, so good job, Ben Mendelsohn. Temporally, this film takes place during the middle of the 100 Years' War, a century-long conflict between the kingdoms of England and France, so expect lots of knights in shining armor. The trailer itself opens with what looks to be the execution of a traitor to the crown of England, likely one of the traitors Scope, Cambridge, or Grey mentioned in Henry V. This looks to be Grey, played here by an actor from the History Channel series Nightfall, which everyone watched once because, Luke Skywalker's in it and Mark Hamill's a national treasure. The movie will follow Henry V's coronation in 1413 and his subsequent invasion of France in the 100 Years' War. The story of Henry V is surprisingly simple. Henry V ascends to the throne, and as part of it, he reasserts his claim to certain territories in France. The French government disagrees, and so it sparks an English invasion. Opposing him in his expedition will be the Dauphin of France. Henry was in his late 20s when he took the throne, and it was a major deal within the Kingdom of England, and the first thing his nobles did was to push him to take war to the Kingdom of France, because you have to prove yourself, and especially in Henry V's case, he had something of a rabble-rousing past, known for being a bit of an upstart as a young man, palling around with drunken fools like Sir John Falstaff, a fat, vain, and boastful, but ultimately cowardly knight. And I suspect we'll see a few flashbacks like this to the early parts of Henry V's life, to show just how much the king has changed since his wild childhood days. But if the film stays true to the play, it'll focus on the English invasion of France, which goes sideways rather quickly, bogging down the siege of the town of Harfleur. And instead of marching their way across France, the English army is stuck at the castle walls for months, eventually with half of it succumbing to dysentery. The invasion a failure, King Henry has to try and save face, so he pulls a triumphant marching tour through Normandy back to his port in Calais, only to have the Dauphin dog his footsteps and eventually force his weary army into a pitched battle. Cue the Battle of Agincourt, which does look to have made it into the film. You can see here a thin line of very heavily armored men with polearms dismounted in a rather big field, as well as a quick shot of a cavalry charge. Now, the Battle of Agincourt itself involves a heck of a lot of archers, in fact 3 times as many archers as you expect to see footmen, and they don't appear in the trailer, but I suspect they're just saving that for a future look. And while they don't appear in Shakespeare's Henry V, it's become standard practice to include them in any film adaptations. And if you're not aware, the Battle of Agincourt is the one where all the archers shoot all the horses, and really sort of changes the face of medieval warfare. After the battle, to sue for peace, the French king offers his daughter, Catherine of Valois, as a bride to the young Henry V to join their two houses as something of a peace offering. What's interesting to note is that Falstaff actually appears in this battle. While in Shakespeare's play about Henry V, Falstaff dies before Henry assumes the throne. So there's really 2 possibilities here. Either this is a flashback to the Battle of Shrewsbury, which Henry fought in when he was only 18, or the film was returning for the historical inspiration for Falstaff, John Oldcastle, who is a Lollard and longtime friend and companion of Henry V until he eventually led a rebellion against him and was executed for heresy in 1417, 2 years after the Battle of Agincourt. It's clear the film will focus on court politics and Henry's inner turmoil, as well as one of the greatest battles in English history, so it looks to be a darn good time and a lot of fun as you're watching through it. For a quick word on historical authenticity, the film's costumes are amazingly lavish and generally historically accurate, and especially the large scrum of ironclad men calls up classic depictions of Agincourt. And even the haircut they gave Henry V is in fact historical, though it does look like he walked into a barbershop and asked for that 90s soccer kid haircut. Henry V has always been mine, and I think many people's favorite Shakespeare play, and it's been performed nearly continuously since its release. I was even lucky enough to catch it as a groundling in the rebuilt Globe Theater, so it's no surprise I'm really excited about this film. There's just something about the story that captures people's imagination, of a basically good and just king who ascends to the throne and then fights for something larger than himself, but dies surprisingly young and still undefeated. Now, the release date isn't official yet, but it will come out sometime in fall of 2019, so keep your eyes glued on this channel and I'll release more details as they come forward, and expect a more detailed history of Henry's Agincourt campaign to release soon. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing what you think about this upcoming historic drama release.